everybody. Good morning. We're going to go ahead and call to order the Senate Committee on Workforce, and today is Monday, March 25th, and we are having a joint hearing, or not a joint, we are having a simultaneous hearing with the House, and so Representative Barker will call to order the House.
House Committee called to order. So we have timer on today, so when you hear a beep, your time is kind of run up and you need to stop right then or very shortly thereafter so we get everybody through. We have a lot of people signed up today, and we want everybody to have the chance to make their statements. Call Representative Alonzo Leon and Representative Williamson, please.
Morning, everyone. Chair Taylor and Chair Barker, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Teresa Alonso Leon, and I represent District 22, which incorporates Woodburn through the north part of Salem. And I'm a strong supporter of House Bill 3031. Having our loved ones be able to be there for us during critical times when we need care is very important. Being with our loved ones when they need care is something we all value. We all know this, yet we've done very little to create the legal and financial support that makes this possible for all of our families. Whether it's the birth of a child, the serious illness of a spouse, or the end of life of a parent, we all need time to care for our families or to be cared for by our loved ones. And providing care to a loved one shouldn't mean compromising in economic security. Currently, 40% of American workers lack job security even though they have unpaid leave because of gaps in coverage under the Family and Medical Leave Act. The same is true for Oregon worker under the Oregon Family Leave Act, or OFLA. However, many people who qualify for unpaid leave report it is essentially inaccessible to them because they cannot go without an income in order to make the use of the time. This means, in this country, a quarter of new mothers are going back to work within 2 weeks of having a baby. They've barely recovered from childbirth, much less has sufficient time to bond with their new baby and adjust to being a parent. Many families are going in debt, spending down their whole savings or retirement accounts, or relying on government assistance to cover unpaid time away from work during critical life events. People, especially women and workers of color, unmarried workers, and low-wage workers, quit their jobs, knowing the long-term financial consequences will be devastating because they refuse to abandon a family member who's in medical need. People are going back to work where they have not fully recovered from a serious illness or injury, leading to greater health problems down the road because they cannot afford the time away from the work that they need to recover. And the list goes on. Families are finding heroic ways to fill the gap created by a lack of paid family and medical leave, but at a great expense to their health and financial well-being. Implementing statewide paid family and medical leave like House Bill 3031 will help Oregon families by providing economic stability during major life events. House Bill 3031 will ensure that workers will be able to take up to 12 weeks of paid leave to recover from a serious illness or to care for a seriously ill family member. Is that the timer? No, okay. An additional 14 weeks of paid leave will be available to welcome a new child via birth, foster care, or adoption, and 6 weeks for pregnancy disability leave. Benefits are available to all qualified workers, regardless of the size or sector of their employers, whether they work full-time or part-time. Benefits are funded equally by employee and employer contributions of up to 0.5%, which is half of the percent of an employee's wage through a regular payroll deduction. When a worker needs time to care for themselves or a family member, they will apply for benefits through the state fund. Employers will be able to offer this benefit to their employees that they otherwise could not afford, and without the administrative burden. Benefits provided by the Paid Family Medical Leave Insurance Program having a sliding scale to provide low-income workers with a higher percentage of wage replacement while placing an appropriate cap on the level of benefit any worker can receive from the program, ensuring access to the program from across income levels. House Bill 3031 uses an updated definition of a family member to recognize those excluded by the current definition: siblings, extended family members, chosen family members, and others, as well as to recognize diverse types of care responsibilities. Workers using the paid family and medical leave benefit will be protected against any discrimination, retaliation, or other work-related consequences for using it. As legislators, we have the opportunity to take real steps towards improving the well-being of Oregon families. Families led by women, single-parent families, LGBTQ family, multi-generational families, and more. We can pass policies that will actually help women and mothers get out of poverty. We can ensure that all workers are well-positioned to support their families. We can help reduce health disparities while ensuring that our loved ones can age with dignity. Thank you, and on behalf of over 40 organizations and 34 bill sponsors, I urge your support on House Bill 3031.
Thank you. Representative.
Chair Barker, Chair Taylor, members of the committee, this is a very confusing committee because there's a small group of senators right here surrounded by House members. My name is Jennifer Williamson. I am the state representative for House District 36, which is downtown Northwest and Southwest Portland. I want to thank you for taking the time for this hearing today and for the public hearing later this evening. I think it's an incredibly important topic, and I think you'll hear from lots of folks across the spectrum. For the last several years, I've been working along many in this room and actually across the country to explore the building blocks for a paid family medical leave insurance program that would work for Oregonians. And we've looked at ways that states across the country have created such a system and how that's worked. During 2018, Chair Taylor and I co-chaired a work group that took an even deeper, a very deep dive into key components. There was so much data. It's all available online if you'd like to go read it. There's more information than anyone probably wants, but questions about how every program across this country works and all the data behind it. And no doubt you will come to the same conclusion, which is this is very, very complicated and very, very complex, but it's one that's crucial for Oregonians. While creating a paid parental family medical leave program may feel controversial to some folks in this room today, it is not at all controversial for Oregonians. For most Oregonians who also see programs being implemented in the rest of the West Coast, the issue is important and action by the legislature is long overdue. In a recent poll of likely 2020 voters, nearly 3/4 of the voters, 72%, support providing paid family, parental, and medical leave to workers. This issue was found to be particularly important to women voters across parties, young voters, non-affiliated and independent voters, people of color, and voters who do not have a college degree. Oregonians across all parties and demographics believe strongly that parents need time away from work to welcome a new child, to make sure they can care for newborns without going into debt, to adjust, to bond, to heal, and to set their kids and families up for success. Oregonians believe that no person should have to choose between paying their bills and taking care of a sick loved one. Oregonians understand that more of us every day are caring for older, is that the buzzer?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you could.
I can keep going though, thank you. Oregonians understand that more of us every day are caring for older relatives and that these programs ensure we can provide loving, cost-effective care to our loved ones as they age, and in turn, we can get the care we need as we age. In fact, colleagues, I spent the weekend with my father who's in skilled nursing care after surgery, and with 6 children, 6 in-laws, and probably a dozen grown grandchildren, and my mother, we're still trying to figure out exactly how everyone's gonna make it so that dad always has someone with him. Oregonians understand that right now, people who most need the program don't have the economic stability. They're likely to have nothing unless there's a law in place. They are living with the consequences every day that we do not act. These are the reasons I'm so passionate about this issue and why this is the third session I've introduced legislation to create a paid family medical leave program. As you heard, and it will be discussed later today, House Bill 3031 has been introduced, and there is a group of legislators, Representative Bonham, Chair Taylor, Vice Chair Knoop, and I have been meeting to look at a possible another legislative concept. And I want to talk about some of the concepts that are in both bills and things I believe strongly should be in whatever bill we pass. I believe every employee should be covered. As you'll hear later today from the Employment Department, 1/4 of Oregonians work for businesses with less than 25 employees. As long as they meet the eligibility threshold and contribute to the fund, they should have access to the time they need, just the same as someone working for a business with 25 or 50 employees. Life doesn't discriminate based on your employer size. I also believe that employees should not fear losing their job to use a benefit they have earned and they have contributed to. Job protections are a key component of House Bill 3031, and I hope will be included in the forthcoming LC draft. Both concepts ensure that low-wage workers have their wages replaced in whole to create a truly accessible program. Colleagues, I think for low-income workers, it shouldn't be more expensive to take the benefit and have them decide that working is the only way that they can actually pay their bills. I know the forthcoming LC draft is not a final product and negotiations are ongoing, and I hope you will help all of us as we continue with this conversation. There are a few elements of House Bill 3031 that I think may end up differing from the final LC draft as the conversations I said are ongoing. The group has been looking specifically at Washington State, which has a small business assistance program that if we modeled ours after that would help Oregon businesses cover the cost associated with temporary workers while an employee is out on leave. The group has also been discussing a possible phase-in that we could get the program up to speed, and there's various ways we could do this. One option would be phasing in the number of weeks for leave or the kind of leave that's available at different times of the phase-in. And finally, the group has been discussing the administration. You'll hear both from the Employment Department and DCBS today, but we've had conversations about what it would look like to creatively administer this program and have been exploring the idea of a third-party administrator for the program. So like I said, those are ongoing conversations. I hope that you will all help us engage in those and that we're able to come forward with a draft that we can all be proud of. And I look forward to working with all of you, the stakeholders in this room, and the governor as we move forward. Thank you.
Questions? Representative, please. Senator.
Thank you.
Old
Very
habits die
confusing,
hard.
they're all
Yeah.
spread out.
We were in the House together years ago, so.
That's right. I was the chair, and so the tables have turned. So.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder to all of us, Senator Knoop.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representatives, I think a lot of us are committed to paid family leave and getting a legislative product. Has House Bill 3031 had a financial analysis done on it to kind of show us costs and those types of things?
I don't know, actually. I don't. Chair Taylor?
Sorry. Yeah. Well, I feel a little
I don't know if
fancy.
we've done a full fiscal.
So I understand why you might not.
So no, it has not had an analysis. We did, so everyone in the audience and committee members, we had a gentleman by the name of Jeff Hayes, and he is a PhD, works in DC, and has helped other states develop the model for he does the financial analysis, I should say, behind the models, and he has been a great resource to the work group. And so I think perhaps what you're referencing is that we've used him at different times to talk about, hey, what if we make this many number of weeks? What does this do to the cost? And if we, change the percentage of how much the employer pays versus the employee pays, and these types of variables. So it's not to my knowledge that at this point that the details of House Bill 3031 have been done. You could kind of make some assumptions based on the other analysis that have been done. And the legislative concept, I don't believe, has had anything.
No, it
done,
hasn't.
so.
And Chair Taylor, Chair Barker, Vice Chair Knoop, on the website and in the work group, we had, as Chair Taylor said, lots of different cost analyses done based on different variables. And the bill that we introduced last session which number escapes me right now, was modeled. And 3031 is not a match to that bill, but it's closer. And so I would assume that that financing model gets closer to maybe some of the other scenarios that we gave folks to price out.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I believe in those modelings that 12 weeks is probably the maximum that was modeled. Does that sound accurate?
There was so much information, Vice Chair Knoop.
Many versions, I think.
I don't know, frankly.
Okay, we will look at that and see.
All there for you.
Thanks. On your website.
My website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to make a statement, if I may, Chair Barker. It's a website that the work group was using because we didn't have, in the interim, we didn't have access to OLIS, and we wanted to make the information public. And so Jan Nordlund here was the staff person for part of the time. Prior to that, Deborah Marinoff was there. And I feel that all the members there made a concerted effort, including Representative Alonzo Leon. Representative Lively was also part of that work group, to put the materials forward. We can have additional conversations around the analysis that was done in the previous session. But I think the takeaway is that all models, all sorts of different weeks, they have been examined, and that information, whatever bill we end up with, yes, there will be a thorough analysis to understand that. So,
Thank you.
I could just add one other thing, Chair Barker, Chair Taylor, that every state that does this differently. So it's not like there's a plurality of states that do it one way or the other. Literally every program is different. And so we've been looking to Washington only because they are the closest. Obviously, we share a border, and they're the most recent to come online. And they are standing up their program right now. So I encourage you to look at the website, because every state is different. We've got lots of modeling on there. And I want to publicly thank all of our staff, especially Jan and Deborah, for doing all of that work. We were quite a needy work group when it came to staffing, and so I want to make sure that we thank you publicly for that.
Question, Representative Barreto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many other states do this or have a program that is funded either entirely by the employee or an employee-employer match?
would you like me to answer that?
Yeah.
Yes, Chair Barker.
Sure.
So right now, it is my understanding that there's 5 plus the District of Columbia. It may have gone to 6 in this amount of time, and there are in the mid-teen level number of states considering paid family medical leave in their legislative bodies. One of the reasons why there's when Representative Williamson was referring to the different types of programs, it's not that the benefit that's paid out necessarily varies that much. There's some variety. It's more about whether or not a state already had things like short-term disability, such as a mandate. There's some of the things that were already in place, and then those legislatures passed something. So not everyone's starting from the same place, if that helps simplify things.
Okay.
Please, Representative Bynum.
Thank you, Chair Barker. Maybe this is a question for you, Senator Taylor, but perhaps for my colleagues as well. Are there other costs on the P&L, on the profit and loss statement, that are decreased as a result of this legislation? So my guess would be we should see a reduction in the workers' benefit fund costs. We should see a reduction somewhat in unemployment claims. Have we explored any of those questions?
Yes, absolutely, yes. Feel free. If you know the answer, yes,
So
please
regarding the
answer,
profit or
Senator
loss
Taylor.
for business, we don't have that information in order to make that determination. And so the analysis is about what the cost, when we talk about the analysis of the program, what we are able to do with using this resource out of DC is look at the variables that, what the program will cost.
Right.
Okay. And then from that, we can say, okay, this is the percentage. In the case of House Bill 3031, it's 50% paid by employer and 50% paid by employee. Okay, so we can get to determine that cost. What that cost is to the business, we don't have the information from the private sector to know what that is, but we do and we have not had a fiscal done for the state of what it will cost, and therefore in local and state governments. That is not been conducted. So regarding what the exchange would be from benefits, at least it's not my intention, and other members should speak for themselves, is to have this be a reduction, result in a reduction of other benefits that are provided. That's not the goal that I have, but that is something that has been discussed in the work group.
And Chair Taylor, Chair Barker, Representative Bynum, we have plenty of experts in this room who have watched implementation in other states and know whether or not things like turnover is reduced for employers. So I know behind me there are people who at least have more information than we do in the modeling around the results in the private sector.
And thank you. We need to keep going here. We're getting behind schedule. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we'll call Representative Bonham and Senator Fagan. How do I pronounce the name?
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
I'll let you check.
Good morning, co-chairs Barker and Taylor. My name is Daniel Bonham. I represent House District 59. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before the committee this morning. As a family man, a small businessman, and most importantly, husband to a wife who has her own professional ambitions, I recognize the changing dynamics of the workforce. For us, it hasn't always been that way. When we were newly married with a young child at home, I set out and blazed a trail of my own career, starting at Evergreen Airlines at $25,000 a year. That whopping salary allowed us, though, to keep my wife at home with our daughter, which was a priority for her. So you can imagine with that big salary, we made some sacrifices to afford ourselves that luxury. We have more dual income households and more single parents in the workforce today than ever before. And now a majority of women in the workforce have children at home. Those of us who are parents recognize that raising a family is the most rewarding and challenging endeavor that anyone can engage in. At my business, Mop & Stoves and Spas, it's not just part of my life, it's part of my family. My kids were raised in the back of the shop for a short time while we were waiting for our one house to sell, and before we closed on the next house, we actually lived in a travel trailer in the back of the shop. And we set up a living room in the shop, which you can imagine was quite exciting. My kids have worked behind the front counter. They've answered the phone. They've gone on sales calls with me. But most importantly, they've built relationships with my employees to the extent that I would argue that my employees are our family as well. When they're successful, my employees, that is, healthy and happy, makes my wife and I feel like we've done something right. You know, I don't know whether it's the inherent nature of the relationship with small business and employees or just it's the intent of how we interact, but the value of those employees is to the extent that you just don't want to lose them. And you get to know them over the course of the day. You engage in their lives. You know what's going on in their personal lives. And you invest not just in them doing their job better, but you invest in them as people. There have been times in our business, plenty of times, where we have been the lowest paid employees. We've gone months where we don't write ourselves the check to ensure that everyone else gets paid on time and to make sure that the business is viable so we can keep those jobs for them in the future. One of the fun prospects of being a small business person, I guess. So I appreciated early on when I was appointed to this legislature that the speaker put me on the early child development, and through that I was put on this paid family and medical leave work group. And you know, I was thankful that my unique voice as a small business person was on that work group. To many of us, our small businesses are our passion. You know, they're the incubator of innovation in this state as well. Oregon small businesses account for 99% of the registered entities and employ over 820,000 employees. We're an integral part of communities. When we succeed, we expand, we invest, we hire more employees, and of course, we pay more taxes. We sponsor Little League teams, and we're engaged out in the community. Paid family and medical leave is not just a neat idea. It isn't something that simply polls well. It's the right thing to do, but it's a balance. It's a balance between what employees need and what businesses can afford, a balance between the role of government and how it interacts with the private sector. House Bill 3385 that we put forward represents a balanced approach to paid family and medical leave and the best opportunity to offer a viable, affordable, and sustainable option moving forward. Others that are going to speak later will speak to the mechanics of the bill, but I want to quickly outline the values that we're after. First, it's shared cost. While the direct payroll allocation can come from employees, employers also have the option to pick it up under our bill, but employers bear the cost of replacement workers and the administrative burden. The benefit needs to be available to everyone. I think we all agree on that. Recognitions that families come in all shapes and sizes. Employee-based benefits best solve issues related to portability. The private insurance market is functioning well for thousands of Oregonians. This is already out there deployed. It's a known commodity today. Small businesses need flexibility, but their employees shouldn't be without the benefit. That we shouldn't simply allow this to be an additional benefit to workers for large employers. We pass another unfunded mandate onto our cities, counties, and schools. We can't afford that. Taking money from schools, local health services is just a non-starter for me. In a session filled with additional cost burdens on small business, finding a proposal that contains administrative costs is critical. Everyone that's going to come speak to you today is passionate about paid family and medical leave, and I think everybody really is dedicated to trying to find a solution this session. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator, please.
Chair Barker, Chair Taylor, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Shamia Fagan, State Senator for Senate District 24. Appreciate the opportunity to present another option, which is Senate Bill 947. I brought with me today a couple of journals. It won't surprise anybody who knows me well to know that I'm a borderline obsessive journaler. I have a number of journals. These two are ones that I started the day my kids were born. My son, who's actually with us today because he's on spring break, is 6.5, and my daughter is 2. And in those early months, these journals are full of those moments that new parents want to have, the 3 a.m., you're both awake, nursing skin to skin with the baby, the new baths, the being able to sit for hours on the floor as they learn to swat at toys hanging over them, and those other types of experiences that new parents deserve to have in a country such as ours, in a state such as ours. So I am here in full support of finding a solution for paid family leave this session. And I just wanted to offer an alternative. I think that it's convenient that we are sitting to your left and to your right. Another option, in addition to the one that Representative Bonham has put forward of having the employee pay for the cost of the insurance, is of course the option to have the employer pay for the full cost of medical leave. And I was lucky, of course, to have these journals full of blissful new baby moments, as I had 2 very healthy babies. But of course, many new parents are not so lucky, as some new moms are battling postpartum depression, as some people have babies that are colicky or fussy or maybe in a neonatal intensive care unit. And I believe that all Oregon families deserve the right to be able to have particularly those first precious months with their new babies. But of course, medical leave or family medical leave covers a lot more than just the birth of a child. I lost both of my parents very suddenly. One, I lost my dad in 2006 after he had died of congestive heart failure while on his morning walk at the track in the Dalles, and lost my mom in 2014 after she fell into a coma suddenly a week before my 2014 reelection and died 5 days before the election. And so these are not things that employees can always plan for. And I believe that all Oregon workers deserve the opportunity to be with their family, either in a blissful moment of having a new baby or in the very unfortunate instance of the serious illness or death of a family member. And before I close, let me note that I believe that this is a situation where I believe in it so strongly that I've offered it to my workers. So I run a small law firm. I'm the managing partner of a Portland law firm. And I have my first employee who had a need for medical leave went out in December of 2017 to have a baby. And as is the policy in my office, she was given 12 weeks of full paid leave at her full salary. And I have an employee who actually leaves for surgery this week. So at the time that my legal assistant went out for medical leave for her new baby, I had 2 other employees other than her. And now I have 3 employees while one is going out for an extensive surgery right now. So it's something that as a person, and everything I pay them comes directly out of my pocket. So it's something that I have not only received as a worker, but also given as an employer. And I believe it's something that all Oregon workers deserve. So as we stake out the options in this debate, there's obviously also the option of asking this to be something that employers pay in the same way that we did paid sick leave a few years ago. Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Remember, we're running really short of time, so please, Representative Canopi.
Thank you, Mr.
Senator Canopi, sorry.
That's all right. Senator Fagan, the details of your bill, how many weeks is your bill proposing?
The bill is actually an update to the Oregon Family Leave Act, and I believe that it is the 12 weeks of the Family Leave Act. It does increase current law of bereavement leave, which is currently only 2 weeks. It does increase that to the full 12 weeks.
Well, I'm sorry, just a follow-up. On page 4 of the bill, it looked like to me that the bill was taking it from 12 to 24 weeks, and that's why I asked the question, because there's been a lot of discussion about 12 weeks, but there hasn't been any discussion about 24 weeks. And so that's why I asked, because you were also saying that employers should pay 100%, which hasn't really been discussed or been done anywhere in the country. So I just wanted to kind of confirm that's where you were at.
I see that, yeah, in the most recent draft, it looks like we did extend it to 24 weeks. And yeah, I mean, it certainly is not something we've discussed yet, but I believe that if full employee pay is part of the discussion, full employer pay should also be part of the discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Representative Holby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is for Representative Bonham. I'm curious on the bill that you presented. There's a piece of it allows an employer to do something different, which would be to provide a plan, an employer-offered plan. So would that be through a insurance company, a private insurance company? And if so, how would those benefits work as far as an employee working for multiple employers or switching jobs? I mean, do they have to start over, or does the plan still accumulate a broad benefit to the worker that's portable between employers?
Chair Barker, Rep. Holvey, yeah, thanks for the question. So yes, it is a third-party administered insurance program. They exist today, and I believe later in the bill it does specify that once you've had a plan, period, whether it be through a private insurer or whether or not it's been a plan you paid into, that you qualify for portability. I'm pretty sure it's in there. I'll double check that, but I'm near certain that's part of the bill.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next to call Nick Belacek, please.
Chair Barker, Chair Taylor, members of the committees, my name is Nick Belachik. I'm the state employment economist for the research division of the Oregon Employment Department. Good morning, thank you for having me. I'm here to provide a very brief overview of some employment-related and wage-related data that was provided to you. So going through this, I think as what was mentioned earlier, providing information about employment and the number of employers by firm size. So in Oregon, approximately 464,000 jobs are at employers that have fewer than 25 employees. That's about 25% of all jobs in Oregon. And the number of employers, about 120,000 employers have fewer than 25 employees. That's about 25% of all that's about 92% of all employers in Oregon. So my first table shows the number statewide, and then I provided information by county. And there's maps that show the share of employees at employers that have fewer than 25 jobs. The darker counties have a higher percentage of employers. And I've also provided this by share of employers. And I've done that at the 25 job cutoff level and at the 50 job cutoff level. So that's available locally for your regions, if you'd like it. I've also provided information about hourly wages by firm size or employer size. And this table shows, although the median wage in Oregon is about $19.95 per hour, the average wage is $31.33 per hour. That varies a lot depending on the firm size, and larger employers tend to have much higher average wages and much higher median wages. And the next two tables provide the number of jobs broken out by salary ranges, so you can really see how many jobs are at the lower end and how many jobs are at the higher end of wages. One of them is by the number of jobs, one of them is by the share of jobs. And I was also asked to provide some information about Oregon's minimum wage. One of the maps in here shows the minimum wage by area and what it currently is through June 30th, 2019. And the number of jobs statewide that are at minimum wage is about 160,000 jobs. That's about 8% of employment in Oregon. The next sheet shows the scheduled minimum wage increase by area, and can see on July 1st, 2019, the minimum wage is going to go up by about 50 cents, or by 50 cents in each area. So I know you guys are rushed. That's a very brief overview of the data provided, and there's a lot more available if there's any questions.
Thank you. Senator Taylor, please.
Thank you very much, Nick, for providing this. So, colleagues, I asked for this information to be presented. This is just actually a really kind of a high-level summary, and this is kind of an example of some of the work that we did in the work group. But one of the reasons why I asked for this specific information to be shared with all of you is for everyone to understand some of the reasons why, at least I'm advocating, and I think you heard Representative Williamson also advocating, why we need to include all employers. Because if we start talking about making limits based on employer size, we will literally end up, but more or less, if you look at page 8 up here in the chart here, in the report, a considerable amount of the state would be excluded from the benefit, okay, just due to the largeness of our state. So we would have, we have a lot of people working for small employers. So if we start cutting people out of the benefit based on employer size, we'll have, again, a very large number of working Oregonians not receiving this benefit. It's just the way that our state is organized. And so and then also wanted to have people understand where wages really fall. So that's why that information is provided. We have a lot of people who don't really make a significant amount of money. And then also the analysis that it's tied to the minimum wage, because that will be changing going forward. So we have to be mindful of that with whatever bill we end up passing.
Thank you.
Just want a little context. There's a lot more information about this and many other topics for those who want to learn more about it. So.
Okay, thank you. Representative Barreto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a real quick, Nick, is this hourly wages by firm size, is this public and private?
Chair Barker, Chair Taylor, Representative Barreto, correct, this is public and private. It doesn't include federal jobs, but it includes private jobs and state and local government.
Thank you.
Representative Bonham.
Thanks, Chair Barker. Just real quick. So House Bill 3385 does include all employees for the benefit. It just excludes the job protection for employers that are smaller than 25. But the benefit's there.
Thank you for the clarification. I apologize, Representative Bonham, if I somehow was alluding that your bill did not have that. That was not my intention at all. I was just explaining to those who have not been in the weeds the way that we have. And Representative Bonham has been a fantastic member of the work group and has come and acted in good faith throughout. So thank you. And I just was trying to give some context to it, but that is correct.
Representative Bynum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the sake of transparency, so I'm supportive of the bills, the concept, us moving forward, but I wanted to be transparent about the numbers that we're considering. So first of all, as we start to enter into 2020, we are going to 75-cent minimum wage increases. So I wanted to acknowledge that, and we've had 50-cent increases up until now, and that is on page something. The second is, can you list the payroll taxes that employers are paying right now? It's on page 16.
Chair Barker, Chair Taylor, Representative Bynum, could you repeat the question? I'm sure.
Be transparent about the payroll taxes that employers are paying right now as we consider adding an additional one.
In general, I think the next group of speakers will have more information about the payroll tax mechanisms.
Chair Barker, so I thank you for the presentation, and that is an excellent question, and we definitely should have that information brought forward to the committee. So we want to we want to be transparent about all of the costs associated. So thank you for the questions.
Representative Golden, or Senator Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In your breakdown of employee size, the smallest class is 0 to 24 employees. Do you break this out in a smaller class, say 10 and under or 5 and under? Is that a line that could readily be added to this table?
Chair Barker, Chair Taylor, Senator Golden, yes, we can break this information out almost however you'd like it.
I think for this and other purposes, a smaller category would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick. I'm sorry.
Thank you,
Representative Bossert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate Senator Taylor, you bringing this up, and in fact, it even surprised me how many were under that 25 or 50 employees. But I also see something different on page 11 when you look at the hourly wages by firm size. And I worry, while a large number are small businesses, I also look at these wages, and there's a reason that there's a disparity among these wages. And smaller companies are already competing against employees, against these bigger firms. And so I worry that some of these bills that we're talking about will disproportionately affect some of these small businesses. We just have to be careful when we're looking at that, because these wages, there's a reason why that $18 or that $17 median isn't a $23 because of the benefits offered. So it will affect small businesses. It will charge them a percentage, not more than, but it will disproportionately affect because of how they can absorb some of that cost. So I think that's something that we should pay attention to, and I really appreciate bringing this information forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Next call, Teresa Van Winkle and Andrea Vogue.
Good morning, Chair Barker, Chair Taylor, members of the committee, Ms. Nordland. I am Teresa Van Winkle. I am the Legislative Director for the Department of Consumer and Business Services. I was asked to provide both committees this morning an overview of how my agency interacts with the paid family leave and medical leave programs. OLIS is a document that provides an overview of DCBS and its divisions and programs, basically what our agency does and our philosophy in carrying out department mission, vision, and values. In a nutshell, DCBS is the state's largest business regulatory and consumer protection agency. We carry out our vision of Oregonians being safe, healthy, and prosperous in 3 key areas: consumer protection in the areas of insurance and financial products, building safety, and worker protection. This last area within DCBS best fits into the paid family leave policy discussion. In the interest of time, I will specifically focus on the workers' compensation system and how it intersects with injured worker claims. OLIS is a flow chart that outlines the agency's regulatory roles within the workers' compensation system. At a high level, DCBS is the regulator for all workers' compensation insurance companies. We authorize third-party administrators who manage the coverage and claims for self-insured employers and self-insured employer groups. We ensure that employers have and maintain workers' compensation coverage. We ensure that workers receive accurate and timely benefits, and we do various aspects of resolution of disputes and appeals. Please note that DCBS does not directly process or administer claims. There is one sliver within the system that DCBS has more direct involvement in a claim. That is one in which a claim is filed by a worker whose employer did not have appropriate workers' compensation coverage at the time of injury. This is known as a non-complying employer or an NCE claim. Under the workers' compensation system, people that are injured while working for an employer lacking current coverage is entitled to the same medical care and compensation as other injured workers. These types of workers' compensation claims are sent to the department by either workers or their legal representation. After the determination if the employer should have had coverage and the claim is compensable, the claim is sent to and managed by a contracted service company, third-party administrator. The claims are managed in a similar fashion as a claim that is managed by an insurance carrier. We currently contract with Sedgwick Claim Management Services. In the calendar year 2017, the DCBS reimbursed Sedgwick about $4 million, which includes both claim costs and administrative costs. And that's for about 86 claims. This is ballpark in regards to the dollar amounts from year to year and the volume of claims, because it varies on claim volume, closure of a claims, and the specific individual costs for each particular claim. Admittedly, the volume of work and oversight under our contract is minuscule compared to other state agencies that do utilize third-party administrators for carrying out services. Examples include PEB's utilization of third-party administrators for carrying out the state's self-insured health plan, the Oregon Retirement Security Board's multiple vendor contracts for the Oregon Saves program, the state treasurer's administrative contracts for the Oregon College Savings Plan and the Oregon Able Savings Plan, and the Oregon Savings Growth Plan administered by PERS. That concludes my testimony, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Please.
Thank you. Chair Barker, Chair Taylor, members of the committee, Andrea Fogg, Legislative Affairs and Communications Director for the Oregon Employment Department. And I'm just going to start out with also a brief high-level overview of how we carry out our mission to support business and promote employment. So we are part of 39 workforce centers across the state, and we help businesses, we help employers, we help job seekers, we help to connect them and promote employment across the state. You just heard from Nick. I think that's a great example of our research and how we provide quality workforce and economic information to help make informed decisions, such as the paid family leave policy decisions you have before you. And finally, we work in partnership with the federal government to administer Oregon's unemployment insurance program. And that program is where we collect payroll taxes from employers. We also process claims, we determine eligibility, and we pay benefits, as well as establishing and collecting overpayments for unemployment insurance benefits. So our agency administers these federal programs. We don't receive any general fund. We are primarily funded by employer-paid unemployment insurance taxes. And that goes into a trust fund that is held in trust for Oregonians to pay out those benefits. So a little bit about paid family medical leave. So we've recently been asked to join the conversation to assess what administration and implementation of a program may look like at the Employment Department. And although our agency's expertise aligns most closely with our administering the unemployment insurance program in Oregon, this would be an entirely new program, an entirely new body of work, and create a new division within our agency. So currently, within our capacity of that expertise and infrastructure, the systems don't exist. So we would be looking at creating a program from the ground up. And the nature of running the federal programs that we do is such that we would not be able to use our existing funding, but with the understanding that there would be adequate new funding for the program, we've begun to explore what that may look like to implement a program at the Employment Department. So we've been looking also at programs across the state and actually across the nation, particularly the state of Washington. You've heard today that that has been part of what has modeled in some of the legislation that's been brought forward. And also our sister agency, DCBS, they've done a considerable amount of work over the years, particularly with previous legislation, House Bill 3087, and now assessing the current legislation before us. So a little bit about Washington, because I think you've heard some about that model, but to give you a sense, in 2015, they received grant funding from the U.S. Department of Labor, really to begin looking at modeling and what various programs may look like. And that legislation passed in July of 2017 to implement the program that they're working on now. January 1st of this year is when they have started to really collect those benefits and reports, and that is with the hope of program being implemented and benefits being paid out in January of 2020. They've got a lot of great information. They have offered, if the committees would find it useful, to share their experience. So if that is useful, we're happy at some point to work with them to provide information and be part of future hearings. So what you've heard today is that these issues are extremely complex, and you have before you many important policy choices and decisions that need to be made. So before we can really adequately understand what administering a program and implementing it will look like in Oregon, that's what lies before you. And the Employment Department stands ready to help and assist in any way we can. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you
Okay,
today.
thank you very much. Appreciate it. We're going to have to keep moving in order to get the people who are on the schedule to very quickly, please, Senator.
Just a quick question, Andrea. Have you priced out what that whole new effort would cost the department in rough figures?
So Chair Barker, Chair Taylor, Senator Hansel, we have not. It really isn't possible at this time to understand what those costs would look like until we know what the policy decisions are. You know, what is the eligibility criteria? What is the eligibility timeline? What are the systems that would need to be put in place? Just those IT systems alone could be quite extensive, and so we really need more detail about the policy before we can begin to cost it out.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Chair Barker. I believe, though, DCBS did do some financial analysis on what an agency would look like and how much it would cost to stand this up. Could you comment on that, Teresa?
Yes, Chair Barker, Chair Taylor, Vice Chair Knoop. Yes, in preparing for the official fiscal analysis for House Bill 3037, we did conduct some level of estimates. However, it's primarily in the staffing needs for our portion of the program implementation administration. If you'd like, I can submit. I know during there are 2 hearings that Senate Workforce did in 2017 during the interim that I presented information. So that information is contained in an exhibit. So at that time, when we looked at the 2017 bill, the estimated staffing needs range from 49 positions for the first biennium for program design and the early stages of implementation to 242 positions for the first 2 biennium of full program operation. And so that included call center, claims processing, dispute resolution within the department, and general program administration.
Please.
Okay, quick question. So the FTEs are in addition to the IT costs for the implementation? Those are 2, correct? And I'm not going to ask you to estimate the IT costs.
I can try to address the IT issue. Chair Barker, Chair Taylor, Representative Bowles. Presumably, the IT costs is for looking at 3031. So I'm basing it upon that, since that's the only bill that comes close to what we've already, DCBS has done work on. The simple answer, it's unknown. If it's expected that DCBS is to create an internal process to do claims, there would be a new IT system, and presumably that would also apply to employment as well. So to parallel Washington State, when they turned in their official fiscal analysis, they indicated for their IT system it was indeterminate. Their program costs overall were also determined to be indeterminate because there was the issue of anticipated business needs and then known business needs as the program is phased in from beginning to full implementation. I should also point out, too, that an IT system for a program of this nature would likely be subject to the state CIO stage gate process, which also has oversight by the Joint Committee on Legislative Information and Technology.
Okay, thank you. So any further question, we're going to have to send them to Jan, and she can get back to us all later. Thank you very much. Next up is Andrea Peluso, Reina Lopez, and Elaine Friesen-Strange. And then next in the batter's circle is Jenny Dressler and Anthony Smith to be ready for the next panel.
Good morning.
Please, just go right ahead and kick it off here.
Good morning, Chair Taylor, Chair Barker, members of the committee. My name is Andrea Peluso. I'm the Executive Director of Family Forward Oregon and a representative of the Time to Care Coalition, which is a group of over 40 labor, community, business, and public health organizations that have been working together for the last few years to create a paid family and medical leave program in Oregon. I do want to acknowledge that it's true that each state with an existing program is different, and because nearly every other country in the world and these 6 other states plus Washington, D.C. have tested a variety of models for doing this, we know a lot about what works. We've seen a lot of data to show that these programs can create a win-win for employees and employers and the economy as a whole. I want to skip to what we're trying to do. I think it's really important to stay focused on the goals that we're trying to achieve with this program as we move through making policy decisions about how it will be structured. And those goals and our values, as I know a number of folks have referenced, are really important to this process. We know that having access to paid parental, family, and medical leave that ensures that our jobs are protected reduces the stigma for needing and using this time. It reduces on-the-job discrimination faced by caregivers who are still mostly women. It protects those of us with the least economic security and who are most often working in sectors that have been excluded from basic labor protections. It is a critical equity principle to help close historic and current race and gender-based pay and employment gaps. But to do that, to achieve those goals, we really have to structure the program with some specific values. And in drafting House Bill 3031, which is the bill that we're here to support, our coalition has been operating with a set of guiding values. I've shared a full set of those with you in OLIS, but we hope that you'll keep the following questions in mind as you're weighing which proposals will move through this process. First, will the program be available to all workers regardless of the size or sector of their employer and whether they work full or part-time? Or does this program, the decision that you're making, cut out the very workers, disproportionately people of color, women, and those in low-wage occupations who need this most? Are all workers able to access paid family and medical leave when they need it? Access means they know about the program, they can use it when they need it, they can afford to use the time, and they won't be fired or penalized for doing so. Does it recognize the diverse array of Oregon families and care responsibilities that exist today, or does it perpetuate a definition of family that is simply no longer how Oregons actually think about what family means or how they live? Is the paid family and medical leave insurance benefit portable? People change jobs frequently. Is coverage in the program attached to the worker and not attached to a particular employer to ensure that those job changes don't mean a lapse in coverage? Will the program be administered so that there is not a profit-making motive to deny claims of those paying into the program, or to pad the cost of running the program, or to reduce accessibility to supports and outreach for employees and employers? Will employees of different genders or abilities be rated or charged differently for needing this benefit? And what kind of public governance and oversight will protect against these things? Does the proposal offer paid leave that is sufficient in length to achieve key health and well-being outcomes for families? Does it offer leave for the full range of well-established reasons that people need leave from work, including OFLA and FMLA-covered purposes, plus military leaves, bereavement leave, and leaves to deal with issues related to domestic violence? Does the program offer time for non-contiguous leave to attend to serious health conditions that don't require leave in full weeks, but that do require scheduled ongoing care, like the kind of that unpaid family caregivers provide to many of our aging or disabled family members on a regular basis? These are essential questions to ask of any program that we develop, and we believe that we've answered them best in House Bill 3031. It feels important to note that this bill is not inventing birth, illness, or death. These things are already happening universally. Every one of us will experience all of them if we haven't already. This bill is just helping employers and employees to manage and plan for these events when they happen. Thank you.
For the record, my name is Reina Lopez. I'm the Executive Director of PECUN, Oregon's Farm Worker Union. Chair Barker, Chair Taylor, and members of the House Business and Senate Workforce Committees, on behalf of our 6,543 members of PECUN, I express our support for HB 3031 and establishing a paid family and medical leave insurance program in Oregon. At PECUN, we work to empower farm workers and working Latinx families, and to improve the working and living conditions of Oregon's agricultural workers. PECUN supports the Family Equity Act, HB 3031, because we believe this will benefit farm workers and their families immensely. Farm workers provide an indispensable service, yet their jobs are some of the most dangerous and least adequately compensated in the country and in Oregon. We know that workers in low-paying jobs are the least likely to have access to paid family and medical leave through their employer. They are also the most likely to take care of an ill relative to avoid the costs of other forms of care. But this often comes at a great financial hardship to themselves and their families. For farm workers are amongst the poorest workers in Oregon. Child farm workers risk safety, health, and education working our fields because their parents can't earn a living wage. Hazardous conditions are routine, including pesticide exposure, extreme heat, lack of shade, inadequate clean drinking water. Much of the injustice farm workers face stems from their specific exclusion from basic protections that workers in other sectors of our society receive. Under state and federal law, most workers are guaranteed certain labor protections to ensure decent working conditions. These protections have not always been guaranteed. Workers struggled to win them in the 1930s, and today rights like guaranteed minimum wage and overtime pay have been around for so long that many of us have taken those for granted. However, it's important to realize that farm workers are specifically excluded from many of these commonplace protections that others have taken for granted. Many farm workers lack basic labor protections such as unemployment insurance, health insurance, and basic wage and hour protections like minimum wage and overtime. For example, we estimate that there are at least 17,000 farm workers in Oregon who currently are excluded from receiving unemployment benefits, but the number might actually be 49,000 farm workers. Many workers at small farms are completely excluded from minimum wage and overtime protections, and agricultural work is hard and dangerous work. Why should they receive fewer workplace protections than others? We are proud to be a part of the Time to Care Coalition and stand behind the values that guide our work on paid family and medical leave, particularly that no worker should be excluded from this policy. It's time to end injustice of excluding farm workers from basic labor protections. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today in support of HB 3031, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairs Barker, Taylor, members of the committee. My name is Elaine Friesen-Strang, and I am the volunteer state president for AARP Oregon. And on behalf of the over 500,000 members, AARP Oregon is pleased to support House Bill 3031. There are nearly 470,000 family caregivers in Oregon who are taking care of an adult relative, spouse, or loved one. About 60% of them are still in the workforce. Most of them are doing so without basic workplace protections. In fact, only 15% of U.S. workers have paid family and medical leave through their employers. Nearly everyone needs paid family and medical leave at some point in their lives. Many end up facing economic hardships due to lost jobs, loss of health care coverage, or reduced Social Security benefits, and I am one of those statistics. At age 58, I left my job as a director of a nonprofit program because I could no longer continue to work full-time and care for the increasing needs of my 93-year-old father. For years, my sister and I struggled to help our parents with their medical, residential, transportation, and emotional needs. Dr. Karen Hooker from OSUSU points out that the average middle-aged couple has more parents than they do children. And when you realize that your parents no longer can advocate for themselves, when they are dependent on others for their basic needs, something has to give. Lost wages and benefits averaged $304,000 over the lifetime of people age 50 and older who stopped working to care for a parent. And the older you are, the harder it is to re-enter the job market. Without paid leave and flexible workplace policies to support family caregivers, vulnerable seniors will increasingly be forced into taxpayer-supported long-term care settings, adding even more pressure to our budget. An important provision in this bill allows for intermittent caregiving leave. Usually, family and medical leave must be serious enough to require at least a week of leave or more. Caring for an aging parent or a seriously ill family member often involves regular, predictable care schedules. This provision would cover an employee to take leave in increments of a day if the reason for leave is predictable on a weekly basis and verifiable. House Bill 3031 is a fair, common sense solution. Everyone contributes, everyone benefits. It allows Oregonians to work and care for themselves and their families. It gives workers the economic peace of mind they need to provide the care that helps loved ones age with dignity at home, rather than in more costly taxpayer-supported institutionalized settings. AARP urges your support on House Bill 3031.
Thank you very much, panel. I appreciate it. Next, we'll call Jenny Dressler and Anthony Smith. If you have questions, let Jan know and we'll get the answers.
Does that go for the rest of this? Any question we have, we just,
Yeah, because
actual
in order for the
questions.
people who are scheduled to speak or signed up, they'll need to get
Thank you.
going. So please, go right ahead.
Right, get that off. Okay. Chair Taylor, Chair Barker, members of the committee, my name is Jenny Dressler, and I am here today on behalf of my clients, the Oregon Farm Bureau Federation and Oregon State Chamber of Commerce. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to House Bill 3031, Senate Bill 947, and the other proposals before the committee today. I'm not just here to address the merit of paid family and medical leave. I'm just here to talk about the practical realities of the bills that we have in front of us today. My clients participated in the conversation regarding paid family and medical leave since 2017, when House Bill 3087 was introduced. We subsequently joined House and Senate work groups on that proposal, and then a joint work group chaired by Senator Taylor and Representative Williamson that met through 2018. While the work group didn't come to any specific conclusion around a policy direction before the start of session, we were given the opportunity to engage in meaningful conversations about the cost and administration of the program, utilization of the benefit, actuarial analysis to establish a risk pool, OFLA and FEMLA conformity, eligibility, benefit stacking, waiting period, portability, and small business concerns. We talked about a lot of issues and appreciate the opportunity to do so. We also reviewed policies from 6 other states and DC that have adopted family and medical leave proposals as well. Given all of that work, I was a little surprised to see House Bill 3031 and Senate Bill 947 introduced because they failed to consider the concerns brought forward by employers over the past 2 years. Specifically, House Bill 3031 creates a benefit program that provides a total of 32 weeks of paid leave. The work group only modeled costs to a maximum of 26 weeks, and that proposal would run a minimum of about $1.2 billion per biennium in insurance premiums. That's without a 6-month reserve to start up the program, the FTE costs to the state that were previously discussed by DCBS, or the IT development expenses. House Bill 3031 also expands the definition of family to an individual who lives with an employee or with whom the employee shares responsibility for each other's common welfare, and also to those with whom you have a close association with. Again, no comments about broadening the definition of family, but want to note that those expanded definitions are likely going to increase utilization. And again, that's something that we didn't model for when we were looking at the cost of the program. So if we're increasing utilization based on a definition, that's not necessarily taken into account in our modeling. House Bill 3031 does nothing to protect small businesses and applies these new mandates to all employers with 1 or more employee, and has the most generous eligibility requirements that I've ever seen. The employee is only required to have earned $300 in the benefit year. Does that mean that somebody could take this benefit in their first week of employment? I think Senate Bill 947 is similarly shocking. My read of the bill is that it expands OFLA coverage to employers that previously had 25 employees and now brings it down to 1 employee or more.
The bill requires public and private employers to cover an employee's full wages while they were out on up to 24 weeks of paid leave per year, and then allows an additional 24 weeks of unpaid leave per year. So that's a total of 48 weeks of leave, both paid and unpaid. As was previously mentioned, Senate Bill 947 looks a lot like sick leave, but it applies the requirement beyond the 5 days underpaid sick leave to 24 weeks. It also reduces the waiting period under OFLA from 180 days to 30 days. With these changes, I just don't think that the employers that I represent could afford this kind of policy. It would be devastating for a lot of the smaller employers in Oregon. The work group discussed these types of policies for a whole year, but never discussed something this big. It's not affordable for employers or for the state. Oh. Well, I have 6 points that I mentioned in the paid family and medical leave work group that I will put on the record.
Okay,
after this.
thank you.
Thank you.
There's no time. Please.
Chairs, members of the committee, for the record, Anthony Smith, Oregon State Director for NFIB, representing thousands of small businesses across the state, here today to express our opposition to House Bill 3031 and Senate Bill 947. And I'll begin with noting that in a recent survey of NFIB members in Oregon, an overwhelming 92% of respondents opposed the creation of a new state-mandated paid family and medical leave program. In conversations I've had with our members, in no way do they oppose the idea of a business providing paid family and medical leave to their workers on a voluntary basis as a way to attract and retain qualified employees. However, a voluntary benefit offered by employers looking to differentiate themselves from their competitors is very different from a new payroll tax on all employers and their employees. You can make a good argument for why employers should pay into other insurance programs that are required by state and federal law. For example, when an employee is injured on the job, that employee is eligible for workers' compensation benefits. Employers fund the system on the premise that the injury would not have occurred but for the fact that the employee was on the job doing work for the employer. Likewise, when workers find themselves unemployed, those workers are often eligible for unemployment benefits. Both employers and employees fund the system via payroll taxes. Employees pay in because that's how insurance works. You pay a little up front and on a regular basis on the promise that if you lose your job, you'll have some degree of economic certainty while looking for another one. Employers pay into the system because separations that are eligible for the benefit by definition are no fault of the employee. Benefits are not paid out generally if an employee is fired for cause or who voluntarily quits. In both our workers' compensation system and our unemployment insurance system, employers pay into the system because their employees are inconvenienced by an adverse action that is directly related to their job. This is not the case for family and medical leave. And it's why, if the legislature decides to move forward with such a program, that the system should be 100% employee funded. In none of the situations described in the bill where an individual would be eligible for the benefit is there any clear relationship between the individual's status as an employee and the personal circumstances for which the individual is taking the leave. Certainly some of those circumstances are planned, like the birth of a child, or other circumstances are unplanned, like caring for oneself or a loved one, but in neither case, however, could any fault be placed on the employer. And absent any fault or control of the circumstances on the part of the employer, there's simply no justification for the employer paying into an insurance fund for the benefit of individuals experiencing non-work related circumstances. For this reason, aside from any other aspects of a paid family and medical leave program, NFIB opposes House Bill 3031 and any other bill that requires employers to fund the system. Equally important to the discussion surrounding how a program would be funded is how small businesses would be impacted in ways that their larger corporate competitors may not be. 90% of our members have fewer than 25 employees, which is a very important number because under current law, specifically OFLA, employers with 25 or more employees are required to provide eligible workers with protected leave to care for themselves or their family members in certain situations. However, House Bill 3031 and the other bill defines employer as any person that employs one or more employees working anywhere in the state, not 25. OFLA, as well as the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act, both acknowledge that the size of the employer is an important factor in determining the business's capacity to accommodate employee leave. When one employee is out on family leave at a big box chain, the employer is more likely to be able to cover the employee's responsibilities by reassigning other workers or offering part-time employees more hours. When a small business that employs 5 people has someone out on family leave, that's 20% of their workforce. The smaller the business, the more likely that the employees are to specialize, and I have additional comments, and I'll submit those for the record, but we're particularly concerned about lowering that standard. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. And
Chair
we'll have-
Barker, I have a question, a quick one.
There's no time. I'm sorry, you'll have to get it to
I'm going to
Jim.
have to ask him a question about on-site daycare and whether employers provide that. So if you could get that
Thank
information,
you,
I'd appreciate
panel.
it.
Next, Bill Perry, Annika Corbett, and Brianna Scott. If there's time at the end of the meeting, we'll have time for questions, but I'm sorry, we just,
Well, that was more of a request for information.
throw away.
Chair Barker, Chair Taylor, for committee members, for the record, I'm Bill Perry with the Oregon Restaurant Lodging Association. And obviously, I think like many people, I understand the importance of paid family leave. I will say that I was able to stay home when my youngest child was born, and I had a mother that had dementia that after my father died, between finances and other siblings, we were able to care for her before she passed away. So I do understand the importance. But that being said, I will say that I do think the state is a good example of what's going through with business right now. Obviously, revenues are up for the state, but as we know, we're still in a budget deficit because benefit programs, both health and retirement and other things, are eating up more than the costs. I will say, I think a lot of our members are in the same situation, to where revenues may be up in the restaurant industry, but when you look at the costs of labor, it is basically being able to be profitable is more and more difficult. A restaurant, it typically is about 3 to 6% profit margin. We have about a 35% labor costs. So when you look at what this session could possibly produce, which is some sort of a consumption tax, which is going to eat into that 3 to 6%, and then you tack on something that would be employer paid on a 35% profit margin, I do think you're going to get in a situation where I'm not going to be able to raise the revenues to keep up with the cost. And so the importance of the program, I think, is a separate issue than who pays for it, because I think Representative Barreto asked the question about the other states. To my knowledge, the other states that have this program, it's employee paid. Kind of like NFIB said. And so there are other programs like short-term disability that are employer paid, but employee paid is the way that all the other states that do this have it. So I would say I support Representative Bonham's proposal or something like that, because I do think that if you fail to do anything, if we choose not to do anything on paid family leave, I think we all know what possibly is going to come. The proponents are going to put something on the ballot that is employer paid. And so you're going to raise the costs of employees by doing nothing. And so I really think it is time to act to get a program in place like 3385, which would basically start it like some of the other states have done, so we can get moving. Let's settle the tax issues and all the other things that are going to be potential costs on employers, but hopefully we can move forward with the benefit program that isn't saddling the employers, because anybody with a low profit margin and a high labor cost, if you do both some sort of a consumption tax and payroll costs increases, I just think you're going to see a reduction in hours, a reduction in other benefits, and it may actually end up hurting your income taxes on the other side of it. So let's try to find something move forward that tries to achieve everything together and not just be punishing the employer on every aspect of this. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Barker, Chair Taylor, and committee members. My name is Nika Corbett. I'm appearing today on behalf of Associated General Contractors. AGC is the Commercial Construction Industry Association for Oregon and Southwest Washington. I'm also a labor attorney at Shelby Williamson Wyatt. AGC is supportive of our members having the time they need with their families, but has a number of concerns with both House Bill 3031 as currently drafted and even greater concern with House Bill 3140. Both place an extreme amount of burden on employers, and the one-size-fits-all approach provides no exceptions for small businesses where one absent employee is felt acutely, and businesses like those in the construction industry with a seasonal workforce. To put the burden of 3031 and 3140 in context, it may be helpful to briefly compare with some of the other states that have implemented paid family leave. The 4 states currently providing paid family leave, California, New Jersey, New York, and Rhode Island, are administrating the program through pre-existing temporary disability insurance programs funded entirely by employee payroll deductions. And so I'm going to make some comments on the paid family leave part. They also have temporary disability insurance programs, and those are funded separately, or differently, different mechanisms. So in California, paid family leave is funded entirely by employee payroll tax. It's administered by a state agency, but includes limited employer-private options. It's limited to 6 weeks of paid family leave and limited to roughly 55% of the employee's weekly earnings with a max of payout of $1,000 to $1,216 per week. New Jersey, again, funded by employee payroll tax, limited private options available, 6 weeks of paid family leave, and roughly 66% of weekly earnings with a max of $637 per week. Rhode Island, employee payroll tax is the funding, 4 weeks of paid family leave, 60% of earnings for the payout with a max of $831. In New York, again, funded by employee payroll tax, it's a state fund with a highly regulated private options available, provides 10 weeks of paid family leave, which is increasing to 12 weeks in 2021. And the payout is up to 55% of the state average weekly wage. In Washington, D.C., which will become effective in 2020, it will be funded by an employer payroll tax, 8 weeks of parental leave, 6 weeks for family care, 2 weeks for employees' own serious health condition, and the payout, the benefit payout is 90% of earnings up to 150% of the D.C. minimum wage, and then above that, 50% earnings with a weekly max of $1,000 per week. Washington, which you've heard people are trying to compare Oregon's bill a lot with, premiums became effective in 2019 and benefits are effective in 2020. In Washington, they're doing an employer-employee payroll tax, but employers with fewer than 50 employees are not required to pay their portion. There'll be limited private options, and the benefit provided is 12 weeks for family leave, 12 weeks for an employee's own serious health condition, so a total of and 14 weeks if there's a pregnancy-related serious health condition resulting in incapacity. But they're capping it at no more than 16 weeks total per year for a combined own serious health condition of the employee and family leave, 18 if that employee experiences pregnancy-related serious health conditions. In Washington, the workers are paid 50% or less. Workers paid 50% or less of the average weekly wage in the state receive 90% of the average weekly wage as a benefit, and workers paid more than 50% of the average weekly wage receive an additional 50% of weekly earnings, with a weekly max cap of $1,000. House Bill 3031 in comparison provides significantly more leave, 12 weeks of paid family leave, 14 weeks of parental leave, 6 weeks for conditions related to pregnancy, childbirth, for a total of 32 weeks, 3140. Oh, there'll be more facts for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Good morning, Chair Taylor, Chair Barker, and other committee members. My name is Brianna Scott, and today I'm here representing Standard Insurance Company. The Standard has served Oregonians from our headquarters in Portland for 113 years. Our company has grown from its roots of providing life insurance for loggers to currently serving more than 6 million customers across the United States. Our special focus on employee benefits, specifically disability insurance and absence management services, gives us a unique lens with which to weigh in on the current effort to roll out paid family and medical leave at the state level. Our request of the Oregon State Legislature is that it allow for the existing robust disability insurance and leave management system currently available to employers across the state to keep doing what it does, provide Oregon workers with financial security and peace of mind. We are concerned that a state-mandated medical leave plan that leaves no room for existing employer-provided benefits may disrupt the more comprehensive longer-term disability and income protection already provided to thousands of Oregonians. It is important that legislators be aware of the existing benefits framework that many employers already provide. It is common for an employer to offer integrated short-term and long-term disability coverage for their workers. These coverages are accompanied by resources such as leave administration for the employer and vocational rehabilitation and accommodation services for the employee. While we champion the effort to extend paid family and medical leave to all Oregon workers, it is imperative that the legislature allow employers to continue offering existing comprehensive private benefits if they choose to do so. Employers, especially those with workers in multiple states, are often relying on private industry to assist their employees with navigating the complexity of FMLA, state leaves, and other employee benefit offerings, including their own company-sponsored paid leave programs. Many employees in the state of Oregon already engage with private carriers to report absences, and the carriers are ensuring that they are informed of offerings available to them. We are concerned that without allowing for private industry involvement, the employee experience will be disrupted, as employees are often relying on the carriers to assist with the education regarding available leave and benefits. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up is Ben Verhoeven, Amy Donahue. The next up in the batting box is Lori Sattenspiel and Scott Winkles. Be the next panel. And Rob Bovet. Thank you.
Chair Barker, Chair Taylor, members of the committee, thank you so much for the opportunity to come and testify in front of you today. My name is Amy Donahue, and I'm a principal with Bora Architects in Portland, Oregon. In 2015, we decided to institute our own paid family leave policy for our 65 employees. We were spurred to action by the circumstances of one of our employees, a young woman who was going to become a single mother, and she had the choice of leaving for maternity leave and coming back 2 weeks later, or financing her maternity leave with credit cards, and neither of those are very good solutions. So we instituted a policy that pays 60% of our employees' salary for 6 weeks of time. And since we've implemented that policy, more than a dozen of our employees, both mothers and fathers, have taken leave to care for their newborns. This year, 6 more Bora babies are on their way, with parents who are quite grateful for the opportunity for the leave. We've also had employees needing to travel suddenly for the death of a family member, as well as a colleague who had emergency surgery, and all have taken the time to heal. It should be noted that each and every single one of these employees has returned to work, ready to work, which has had a significant impact on the firm's financial health and success, mostly because we've been able to retain our investment in our employees' talent, experience, and job knowledge, which for our business is really everything. We understand that there are many businesses, particularly smaller businesses that we've heard from today, who would struggle to offer this benefit. And this is why a state insurance policy is so critical. Oregonians should not be forced to accept economic hardship or the loss of gainful employment for prioritizing their own well-being or that of a loved one. From our own experience, we know that when you support employees in their personal lives, you create an environment of trust, loyalty, and dedication between the employee and employer that is beneficial for our economy and for our industry. Since implementing our policy in 2015, we have never looked back. Each year, we set aside a small portion of our budget for paid family leave, our best guess as to how many staff members will need to take advantage of the policy that year. State insurance program would have the added bonus for us of fixing a business cost while extending a necessary benefit for our employees. And our financial analysis looks at the proposed payroll tax indicates that the cost would be achievable both for our firm and for our employees. By sharing the cost, everyone benefits. Bora will continue to offer paid family and medical leave, and we will encourage our colleagues across the profession to follow suit. But everyone needs and deserves to have access to paid family leave, not just the architects in the state. It is time for Oregon to acknowledge the moral and economic imperative to do so and join the 6 other states in the U.S. who have taken action to implement a policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please.
Chair Barker, Chair Taylor, members of the committee, hello there. I'm Ben Verhoeven. I'm a second-generation farmer and nursery owner. I run a family-owned greenhouse in Albany, Oregon. I am a constituent of Representative Beauchart Davis. I'm proud to say my 26 year-round and 40 seasonal employees receive great benefits which, in the big picture, don't cost me much, but mean a lot to everyone, and they're good for business. My workers are entitled to 12 weeks of full-pay parental leave, maternity and paternity, not to mention health care, paid vacation, paid sick time, and a pension. Many industry groups claim that policies like ours will hurt business. That's just not true. Paid parental leave on average costs me less per year than truck repairs and has a much greater effect on the lives of the people I work with, especially their families. When industry groups say paid leave will hurt businesses, what they really mean is that it will hurt their personal profits. I know this because at the end of the day, these costs come out of my pocket. I am not immune to such costs, but Oregon farmers have a proud tradition of contributing to our communities. Paid family leave is another way that we can take care of our employees, co-workers, friends, family, and neighbors. Opponents of paid family leave will tell you that only individual workers benefit from such programs, and therefore all of the financial costs should fall on workers' shoulders. This is also not true. Workers are not the only beneficiaries. As a business owner and native Oregonian, I benefit when our state can attract and keep the best workers. At our nursery, paid parental leave helps me retain key employees, and it has been a fantastic recruiting tool for new hires. I don't have to retrain, and I can find and keep the best possible workers. Let's make the same true for Oregon. As a business owner, I also benefit from stronger, healthier, more resilient markets. Lessening the financial hardship of an illness, a birth, or a family crisis leaves more savings in people's pockets, savings they can put towards homes and gardens, especially when the weather's nice, as it finally has been. Asking employers and employees to pay into something jointly is not a radical idea. Together, we all pay taxes to support schools, to improve roads, and keep our neighborhoods safe. We do it because we have a mutual interest in a prosperous and vibrant state. As any farmer will tell you, we are subject to the forces of Mother Nature. A crop failure affects our business in the same way a sudden illness affects a family. Those of us in agriculture should be especially empathetic to anyone dealing with a sudden family issue, which is why I applaud the authors of this bill, House Bill 3031, for doing away with the employee threshold and expanding coverage to include all businesses and employees. Life events like birth, illness, and ailing parents happen to all of us, regardless of the size of company we work for. I would also add that as a farmer and a small business owner, the proposed legislation is a good bargain. I cannot afford comprehensive paid family and medical leave on my own, which is why an insurance program is the best way forward, as it would allow me to also provide medical leave. It costs businesses like mine less than offering standalone plans, and I know that my workers are also contributing. The state program will manage the process, confirm a worker qualifies, and of course, pay for the leave itself out of the fund. This is a real service both for me and for my employees. Oregon cannot afford to pass this opportunity up. It makes sound business sense. It makes sense for Oregon. It's the right thing to do.
Thank you.
Please support House Bill 3031.
Thank you. Lori Sattenspiel, Scott Winkles, and Rob Bovet. And the final list is Justin Black, Eva Ripito, and Jess.
Chair Barker, Chair Taylor, members of the committee, Lori Sattenspiel here in opposition to House Bill 3031. I represent Oregon School Boards Association. I want you to remember these three things: 38, students, and cost containment. The bill would allow up to 32 weeks of paid leave, and the employee does not need to use the already negotiated leave that they have in their collective bargaining agreements. Given the state of the classroom disruptions our educators and us already talk about, educators talk about the need for more time to develop relationships with their students. We have schools piloting trauma-informed care, which requires all of our educational folks in the buildings to help walk the education journey with these students. We cannot do what's best for our students if we don't have educators consistently in front of our students. I have research that suggests chronic absenteeism among teachers. Also suggests that the more generous leave policies lead to more teacher absences. The bill is bad for students. OSBA is working to support the efforts of the legislature to make a significant investment in education. Most of you displayed the green, bright green poster with our investment. One of those buckets is increased learning time, days and hours. Other, putting more resources into closing the achievement gap and directing dollars to our traditionally underserved populations. The bill, as been mentioned before, is very, very broad on leave, what can be added for teachers and other folks to be able to be out of the classroom. This bill sets up a barrier for schools in their ability to increase student outcomes. Schools aren't like a state agency or other businesses that manufacture or sell products. We can't put just anyone in front of students that when teachers or others are on leave. We're talking about classroom needs. We don't produce widgets. These are students who need their educator consistently in front of them teaching. Joint Committee traveled the state. A lot of you were on that, and you heard from students. We need teachers and counselors, teachers teaching, counselors supporting them to help reach into their future. This bill creates additional distractions for our classrooms. Remember cost containment. The bill has a business side for our school districts to mandate additional costs. Just the 0.5% of payroll on our employers, $35 million for the biennium. We took some basic assumptions under 60+ thousand FTE reported to ODE. We took half of the licensed, half of the classified, figured up substitutes costs to just that piece to put them in the classrooms, $30 million for the biennium for licensed, $18 million for classified. Again, dollars that won't go to the classroom. 3031 calls out a cap on employees' contribution, but I didn't quite, seemed to be unclear about what that cap may or may not look like for employers. I hope we don't create a PERS 2.0 problem. Conflicting statutes. Education already has special rules for teachers on leave, and then it's 659A 177. Plus, education already has in statute 332507, which is our leave. It's already, and it's negotiated. Many of you, if not all of you, want to improve education, and you campaign on it. This bill does not help our education system. The bill only creates more distractions. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, whoever.
Chair Barker, Chair Taylor, and members of the committee. For the record, Rob Bovet, Legal Counsel, Association of Oregon Counties. I won't repeat any of what Lori said. I'll just address issues that our members are particularly concerned about. You'll hear from one of our members, in fact, in a minute, that essentially does this already. And that's great. We're not here to suggest that the underlying policy is a bad idea. We're here to express concerns that employer mandates are stacking on counties right now. We have some members that are doing okay, shall we say, that can provide a higher level of benefits than other members. In fact, I think it's traditional that public employers provide better benefits and less wages, and I think that's true today. But we also have many members who are, let's just say it plainly, virtually bankrupt. We have many members that are struggling just to meet the basic core public service demands of the citizens. And a big part of that is employer mandates. We've had the PERS employer mandate since the mid-1970s. It's burying us, burying many of our members, and will continue to do so over the next 3 biennia at least. So we're very concerned about additional impositions of employer mandates that will directly translate to a reduction in public services. So we urge you to be very cautious and careful in pursuing this policy and make sure we don't do undue damage to core public services. I will say, in terms of the unfunded mandate issue, which I don't think anybody has addressed quite yet, it probably will resolve itself, maybe, maybe not. If you impose an employer or employee payroll tax, that's likely a revenue-raising measure and will require a 3/5 majority, supermajority of both chambers in order to pass. That's the standard for creating an exception to an unconstitutional unfunded mandate. If you drop below 3/5, it's likely you can't legally pass the bill, and it's likely that one or more of our members will seek to invalidate the bill because of that failure. So again, we urge caution and care in imposing any new employer mandates in Oregon right now, particularly as it affects the public sector, because we are getting buried by PERS.
Thank you. Scott, please.
Chair Barker, Chair Taylor, members of the committee. For the record, Scott Winkles representing the League of Oregon Cities. And I would like to point out that I was the local government representative on the work group that has existed since 2017. I would say that unfortunately, I must characterize Senate Bill 947 and 3031 not reflective of those efforts. Employers and advocates spent a great deal of time analyzing plans. We looked at the comparisons that you've heard before that I won't repeat, but a plan, particularly in 947, 24 weeks of medical leave at 100% of rate of pay, with a highly permissive list of officials who are allowed to certify that that leave is necessary. I would suggest that the premiums for such a plan are going to be much higher than the employer or the employee would be willing to tolerate, or you will have a problem with the adequacy of the fund. The problems with that should be clear. Additionally, we have several cities in Oregon that do offer some form of a benefit in this way, and it can occur in a number of manners. So some cities might just leave an employee needing medical leave or family leave on payroll with the certification process. None of these. Additionally, we allow employees to bank unlimited amounts of sick time in many jurisdictions, so they would have leave available to them. None of these current plans would we be allowed to pursue, provided if this bill were to pass, and how those benefits would be resolved is unclear, as some of them are bargained. I also must address affordability. The scope of unsustainable costs that the state, either through legislative action or through the initiative process, on local governments is matched only by the unfairness and inadequacy of our local government finance system. We have property tax revenues that are capped. We are preempted from raising local taxes in many areas where we see significant costs, i.e. alcohol. To suggest that we could accept a mandated costs in an area where we expect PERS rates to hit over 30% of payroll, where our property taxes continue to not meet local demands, to think that this bill will not result in a service cut is unrealistic. We have already seen cities cut payroll. I know Ontario has laid off at least one police officer. Sherwood has currently laid off people in anticipation of the PERS rates in their last budget cycle before the new rates hit. This is happening all over Oregon. So we can provide this if the legislature directs it, and it's passed with a certain majority, with a supermajority necessary to override the unfunded mandate provision of the Oregon Constitution. But if we do so, it means we will be doing less, and Oregon citizens and guests are not going to get the same level of service. The League strongly recommends that the vehicle the committees pursue is House Bill 3385. That creates an employee-paid plan similar to other states, and we believe that should be the basis of further conversation.
Great, thank you. Thank you, panel. And last we'll call Justin Black, Jess, and Eva Ripito.
Chair Taylor, Chair Barker, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Justin Black. I'm the Director of Government Relations for Multnomah County. On October 8th, 2015, the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners resolved to provide paid parental leave to all eligible county employees following birth, adoption, foster care placement of a child. The action made Multnomah County the first government in Oregon to give parents time to bond with their new child, adjust to their new family situation, and balance personal and professional obligations, and to provide base salary continuation. The resolution was to provide up to 6 weeks of paid parental leave. All regular, probationary, and limited duration employees who had worked at least 180 days prior were eligible. This is in addition to current paid sick and other leave provided by the county. Increasingly, employees are seeking employers who support their families. U.S. Labor Department reports that the median cost of replacing an employee is roughly 21% of their annual salary, and that human resource manager surveys show supportive policies are the single most important factor for attracting and keeping employees. 3 years after the implementation of the county's paid leave program, we partnered with OHSU and PSU Schools of Public Health to evaluate the impacts of our program. In short, the evaluation found that employees only take an additional week of paid leave compared to what they had before, and that over 70% of employees said that paid family leave was very important, both for applying for a job at the county and for a reason for staying at the county. The Multnomah County Board knew in 2015, and they know now, that it's important for families to get the time they need when they're bringing a new family member home or caring for a sick family member. As an employer, recognizing this need has helped retain employees and attract new ones. Our board recommends that the legislature work to refine the legislation and make sure that the final version complements employers that are already providing paid family leave, like being able to provide full wages and continuity and also making sure that there is consistency in language between this bill and what is already provided in OFLA. We look forward to the Oregon Legislature joining the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners and passing paid family leave. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairs, vice chairs, members of the committees, my name is Jess Genatino Viatoro, and I'm the political director at the Oregon AFL-CIO. The Oregon AFL-CIO strongly supports House Bill 3031. We are a voice for all workers across the state, and including the 300,000 that we represent. The pieces of 3031 that we are particularly excited about are that it covers all workers. It has job protection for all workers who access the benefit. I think especially in light of hearing that the median wage is $19 an hour, that the wage replacement is structured for lower income workers. I just want to take a minute to address some of the concerns that we've heard highlighted before the committee today. So the Farm Bureau raised this idea of 32 weeks as a large number of weeks that someone could take as a benefit. That 32 weeks is only provided if a worker exhausts all of their pregnancy disability and all of their pregnancy leave. All other types of leave are capped at 12 weeks. Another concern that was raised is the $300 trigger. That trigger is modeled after California. I think we also heard concerns about the family member definition that you will find in House Bill 3031. They are right that that is different from the conversation that we had in the work group that was led by Senator Taylor and Representative Williamson that Eva and I both participated in. Since that work group has closed, there's been lawsuits around affinity, and maybe the affinity was too broad. So the nexus of factors that you will see in 3031 is an attempt to limit or to clearly articulate the limitations meant by affinity. Other concerns that were heard, I think AGC raised lots of concerns around that pregnancy and paternity leave that we reference in this bill is largely only paid by the employee in other states. That is to an extent accurate, but that is because those states already had TDI programs that were built up that are funded by employers. Since then, Massachusetts and both Washington have stood up programs that are funded by both employers and by employees. I think another concern that was raised by OSBA was the cap on the employer and the employee contributions. In Section 5, you'll see a sentence that says, payroll contributions shall be paid by employers and eligible employees in equal amounts. Our intent was to not just set a cap on the employee contributions. Our intent was also to set a cap on the employer contributions. The DCBS director can lower those caps if it turns out that the fund is really solvent, as we've seen in other states, but we would have to come back to the legislature for you all to make a decision about increasing the percentage of either contributor. I think one of the other concerns that was raised maybe by NFIB is this idea that small businesses should only be responsible for the actions that they take against their employees. I think what we heard from Representative Bonham, and why I really appreciated Representative Bonham's voice in the work group, was this need for and this interest in small businesses having really active lives with their workers, and this idea that small businesses get to step back from the lives of their workers and only provide a benefit when the employer takes an action, I think is divorced from the reality that a lot of small business owners have. They want those workers to be able to move forward in whatever comes their way, because we're not always going to plan for pregnancy, and we're not always going to pay for a death or plan for a death in our family. And I think that narrative is particularly harmful when we think about women, right? Because we know that women are most likely the people to take care of family members, and if there is no employer benefit when that happens, women are never going to be able to continue to move forward.
Eva, please.
Chairs Taylor and Barker, members of the committee, my name is Eva Ripito. I'm with Oregon AFSCME Council 75 Political Coordinator. Oregon AFSCME represents nearly 27,000 workers in the state of Oregon. None of them make widgets. All of them are arguably in specialized career paths, whether it's caregiving for small children, school-aged children, working in school districts, providing mental health or behavioral health supports, or working in the medical field, or with other people generally. I think that our employees largely see this as important, or members largely see this as important, because they know that when they get the time that they need to heal or be with their families when something is medically arises, that they're able to give more time to their work when they're there. They're focused on the work and not worried about what's going on, with their loved one's health, their own health, or whether their baby is in safe care. For the people that they work with, particularly our social workers at OHSU who work with families who have small children at Doernbecher, they see too often families making choices of leaving their baby in care. Well, they can't leave the baby in care unattended without a parent or a guardian there, so they have to take time off from work, and too often that's unpaid, and then they're struggling to make bills or pay their bills. I also wanted to address a concern about the startup costs. The startup costs in Washington, is that right? From a loan in general fund and paid back by the contributors. Its ongoing administration is paid for through contributions factored into anticipated costs, and the phased implementation over 2 to 3 years stayed. I can't read what you wrote. Sorry. And staggered rules process with ongoing stakeholder input provided for the program to get up and ready and be successful. Teamwork. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Oh, I also wanted to point out that in Oregon, our child care rules state that a child cannot be placed into licensed child care until 6 weeks of age, with so many families returning to work at 2 weeks, which has been documented. This puts parents in a position of putting their child in care that is oftentimes cobbled together, which is consistent throughout their lives, but is not safe. And the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that children not be placed into commercial care until at least 3 months of age, but they actually think 6 months to a year would be far better for bonding. So I would also take any questions.
We have like 2 minutes for questions if anybody has one. It looks like we're up against the deadline here. Thank you very much, panel.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I just wrote them all out. I'm sending
Okay, thank you. Thank you, panel.
Thank you.
I want to thank the Senate for joining us on this hearing today as well. Appreciate that. Yeah, yeah. And the meeting, we'll suspend the meeting until 6 p.m. tonight.
Close it, or we have a
Okay.
new meeting at
Okay, we'll close the meeting and we'll have a new meeting at 6 p.m. tonight.
public hearing at 6 p.m. tonight.